Hello, my name is Dr. Gregory Roper. I'm the Dean of Students here at the University of Dallas, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of your time for this little session on preventing hazing. A quick reason for why we do this. The federal government last year commanded that schools have training on preventing hazing because it has been a problem at schools and universities across the country in the past. I will say this, that at least in my 5 years as the Dean of Students, we haven't had a single hazing case. I don't think this is a problem at the University of Dallas to any real extent, but the federal government has mandated that we have this training, and I think it's a good thing anyway to know about this subject and to know about what causes it, where it comes from, what constitutes hazing, because it is a crime in all 50 states, as you'll find out. And there have been problems on other campuses. Largely, I will say, in many other campuses, what I've read from the case studies, it tends to happen in Greek culture, that is, fraternities and sororities. Sometimes in athletic cultures, it can be a problem. But I think it is still important for you to know about it and understand it and know how to prevent it. So let's begin. First, I think it's just important that we know what we're talking about, right? So let's look at the definition in the student handbook, which is taken from federal and state law. Um, Hazing is, here's the language, I'm going to read it all out to you first. Any intentional, knowing, or reckless act on or off campus by one person acting with others, directed at another for the purpose of being initiated into, affiliating with, holding office in, or maintaining membership in an organization, dormitory, or other student group, regardless of whether the victim may have consented to the activity. I'm going to add one more thing and then I'm going to go back through this. Often it is of a humiliating nature or asks someone to do something illegal. Okay, I just want to go back over this. As a good professor, I am an English professor, so I want to go back over when I present a complex text like that. I always want to go back over and make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. And I'm going to use my little cool pen here. I'm actually going to start at the second part of this definition, right? What is hazing? Hazing is doing something to others because you want to initiate them into a group. If you're saying you have to do whatever these things are to be affiliated with this group or to be an officer in this group, right? Or to even like continue in membership in any sort of a group. So, and what groups? Any sort of organization, even like to be a member of this dorm, to be one of the people in this dorm, right? Or any other student group, any sort of, even as we'll find out, even unofficial groups, right? Now, right. Right now, the act has to be, I'm going to change the color of my pen just for the fun of it. The act, intentional, knowing, or reckless act. Now, notice that's an or. If you studied your logic, not an and, right? It could be reckless and it couldn't have been maybe not intentional, or it could be intentional and knowing, but not reckless. It does not have to be all three of those things. It could be just one of those things, right? Intentional, knowing, or reckless, right? Now let's note something else. It doesn't have to happen on campus. It could be on or off campus, right? It can be by one person. All right, let's do another fancy color, right? Or someone, right? A group of people acting with others. It can be just one person committing hazing, or it could be a group of people committing hazing, right? Directed at someone else, right? For this purpose, right, of initiating people into a group, of making sure that you have to continue to be affiliated with this group, to contain your membership, or to be an officer in this group, right, right. And now I want to point out one more thing at the bottom, right? Regardless of whether the victim may have consented to the activity. Often in the case studies of hazing, you'll see something really terrible happen to a student, so that you can be an officer in this group. And they're like, hey, I love this group. I've always been a member of this group. I consented to doing this. Well, it's still hazing. even if you drink, right? And often that's because the activities are coercive, right? It's like, well, and there is some question of whether they have actually consented to it or not. But even if they've consented to it, it's still hazing, right? It's often of a humiliating nature, or it's ask someone to commit some illegal act. So let's talk about some of these actions of hazing. All right, any type of physical brutality, striking, beating, bruising, maiming, right, or putting a substance on or in the body, or threatening to do such, right, or offering to do such, right. We're going to beat you unless you do X, Y, and Z to be a member of this group, right, or putting a substance in someone's body or even on their body, right. There have been instances of hazing where people put like caustic substances on a person's body, right. Forcing someone to ingest a substance, right? Alcohol, any sort of like nasty liquid, right? Somebody hands you a cup full of like really gross stuff and you don't even know what's in that and they force you to drink it, right? Or eat, nasty, rotten food or something like that. And especially alcoholic beverages and especially to intoxication. And again, the case studies are full of these situations. Fortunately, again, not at the University of Dallas, but at other schools. You have to drink to intoxication to be a member of whatever our group is, right? Um, Sleep deprivation is an action of hazing. That's happened on other campuses. I've had students on other campuses who told me, to belong to a specific organization, they had to stay up for 3 straight nights, and there were others in the organization that would come in and make sure that they stayed awake for like 3 straight nights. Exposure to the elements. We're going to drive these three, newbies out into the woods and leave them there, and leave them exposed to the elements, right? Confine them in a small space. We're going to lock, 5 guys in a closet, or we're going to put you in the trunk of a car. Or excessive calisthenics. We're going to make you do burpees until you literally drop and vomit. Those have all happened. I mean, these are all a part of the cases that have happened in hazing at other universities. So I want you to know about these things. And the last, again, this was sort of mentioned earlier, right? Forcing or coercing someone to violate the Code of Student Conduct or other university policies or the law. There have been cases in the case studies of hazing. You have to go steal something from that place. To be a member of our group, you have to go violate this part of the Code of Student Conduct to be a part of our group. To be one of the cool guys. That's very, very much a part of the actions of hazing. So all of these different things are descriptions. They're not exclusive descriptions. There are other things you could do to people, but these are some of the actions of hazing that are in the case studies over the years. Okay. And again, now this is, I think, very important, right? Causing an act to be committed in any of these ways. So you might not have been the person to actually, put something on someone's skin, or you might actually have not been the person who held the cup to the person's face with the nasty stuff in it and made them drink it, right? But you were the president of that group, or you were an officer in that group, or you were just the head honcho in this group that day who told somebody else to do it and made somebody else do it to that newbie, that freshman, or that whatever, right? You would still be guilty of hazing. All right. um, I think it's really, really important to know what are the consequences, right? Because again, hazing is illegal in all 50 states. All 50 states have state laws against hazing because we've seen, right, horrible consequences. We've seen people injured. We've seen people die through some of these things, right? Incredibly excessive alcohol consumption. They've died of alcohol poisoning. We've had people die of exposure, being left out in the woods to find their way back home or something, and they get lost and they die of exposure. These things have happened in the United States of America in the last several decades. And I don't know what's the most recent case, but it has happened, right? So what's going to happen? There will be an immediate investigation on campus, potentially leading to suspension or expulsion. right? And this could not only lead to expulsion for them, those who committed the hazing, but could also lead to at least suspension or even the club or organization ceasing to exist. It could lose its ability to exist at the University of Dallas. Um, it can also result in immediate interim suspension while the case is being processed. So you could be suspended, if there's sufficient evidence that you were involved in this during the time that the case is being processed and taken to the Committee on Student Discipline. So I want you to know that, right, and understand that the Dean of Students does have that power. Okay. Let me click here. Sorry. So I want to make sure that you understand, right? Suspension or expulsion as a crucial part of this entire process. Okay. All right. It will also likely be resulting in the case being turned over to the Irving police for their own investigation. Since hazing is a crime in all 50 states, and there's now federal regulation of it, that it's very, very likely that case will be turned over to the Irving police for their own investigation. You need to know that, right? That this is not just, a violation of the University of Dallas rules. You may very well have committed a crime, and we are required to turn those sorts of things over to the Irving police, right, for prosecution, for investigation, if not prosecution eventually, right? Now, um, two questions that have come up. What about if these things happen off campus? As I've already said, right? Um, it's on or off campus, is in the student handbook, right? Or what if the group isn't an actual official group or club of the university? It doesn't matter. The law still applies, period. And I have looked into the case studies. There was a recent case at an unofficial group at a university on the East Coast. They didn't have official recognition of the university, but they were a group. They called themselves a group. They met regularly at an apartment off campus. They engaged in hazing activities. The law still applied in that case. That they were being hazed as university students, so that they would belong in this unofficial group. The law still applied, and those students were turned in, and there was a criminal investigation of it. Um, so you need to know that. All right. Um, Now I want to talk about the real consequences, criminal penalties, and there are criminal penalties. This is not a civil case. This is a criminal case. If the hazing results in serious bodily injury, you could be fined anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000, and or spend 180 days up to 1 year in jail. All right. If death results, you could be fined $5,000 to $10,000 and or 1 to 2 years in jail. So both of those things, or one of those things, could happen, right, through a criminal case, through a trial. Um, so you need to know, like, the states are not messing around with this stuff, and they will prosecute, and they will seek penalties uh, as a result of prosecution. All right. I want to talk a little bit about if you were in a situation like this, if you saw this happening, if you were around this happening, how would you need to respond? Or what are some of the ways you can respond? Well, the two things you need to do is you need to report it, and if at all possible, you need to intervene. Now, both of these require the virtue of courage. And we talk a lot about the different virtues here at the University of Dallas. But what do we say is that anybody who does any work on virtue ethics, as President Sanford does, will tell you that none of the other virtues work unless you have courage. You cannot be temperate unless you have courage. You cannot be just unless you have courage. And it's going to take some courage, right, in a group situation, right, where all the other members of the group are thinking this is a good thing, right, to actually step forward and report it and intervene, right? If you know about hazing happening, you should get in touch immediately with the University Police Department. You should get in touch with an RC. You should get in touch with some other university official. You will have an app on your phone that you can push a button on that phone, and UDPD will know if you are on campus within 20 feet, I think it is, where you are, or 25 feet, maybe, I'm not sure. But within like 20 to 25 feet where you are, all you need to do is get out, push that button, and UDPD can come and be there with you. But you can also contact your RC. You can contact any other university official. If you know about this, if you know about it happening, if you've heard about it happening, you need to report it, right? If it has already happened, you should report immediately that it has happened. Right? If it is in the process of being planned for the future, you should contact some of us in the Office of Student Life as soon as you hear about it so that we can intervene and stop it before it even happens. You really need to take that responsibility upon yourself. Just as importantly, if you are there and something like this is going on, you have to have the courage, right, to intervene. Now, we'll talk about amnesty in a moment, right? But if you are the person reporting this, right, you will have an amnesty provision. If you do not report it, you can be charged as having participated in that event, right? But you really do need to intervene. You have to find the courage to speak up and stop the behavior, right? It seems to me there's two ways you can do this. We're going to talk about this in a lot of different things at the university, right? One way is to redirect, right? Pull the person aside and say, well, we're not going to do this. Let's do something else. Let's try something else here. Let's move to a different thing here, folks, right? But if necessary, you may have to put yourself physically between the victim and the person doing the hazing. You may have to have that courage to say, to stand in front and say, no, this is not happening. And that takes courage, and I understand it takes courage and a lot of courage. But you may have to do that, right? To show. Now, I want to talk about amnesty, right? A person, right? And I want to read you this statement carefully, right? A person who reports an incident or incidents of hazing to their RC, to the Dean of Students, the Director of Residence Life, the Director of Student Engagement, University Police Department, or the Title IX office is going to be immune from student conduct liability, right? You will have immunity if you are the person reporting this incident, right? If you report it before being contacted by the university. That's the first condition, right? You can't wait until we come to you investigating something and then say, oh, yeah, I'm making an official report here. No, you have to be the one to have the courage to come forward, right, before we come to investigate the situation, right? And not or, notice both of these things have to be the case, right? The dean of students or the dean of students designate, right, determines that the person is acting in good faith throughout any institutional process. Like throughout any institutional process, you have to continue to be honest with us. You have to continue to be forthcoming with us, right? So you have to come forward, and you have to come forward and tell us, right, the good faith, full story, and continue to act in good faith throughout that institutional process. Okay. And again, there are reasons for this, and there are reasons in the case studies of this, of people saying, right, doing both of those opposite things of, saying, we come at another university, someone comes to investigate this. Oh, yeah, now I want to make a report so that I can have amnesty. Nope, I'm sorry, it's too late then, right? Or someone, makes a report and then begins to renege on it, right? Or refuses to act in good faith throughout that process. Okay, but if you do these things, and this is what I want to show you, like this is why it's important to report. If you can't intervene, it is important to report right away, right? Is that we will protect you, we will offer you amnesty, you will not be charged, right? If you continue to act in good faith, right? Because we want you to report it, when we want you to know that, right? Now, you're not immune, you're not granted amnesty if you report your own act of hazing, right? Or if you report an act of hazing in bad faith or with malice, right? If you're reporting that, right, maliciously, falsely, in any way, you would not be immune for any of the activities that have happened there. You would not have amnesty. Okay. Um, I want to just try a couple of cases, right, and just sort of walk through this and sort of think about, right, some concrete sorts of things. Okay. Um, Here, upper class students enter a dorm at 2 a.m. during Groundhog Week and force freshmen to drink a nasty substance and do push ups. Is that hazing? It very well could be. Right? If they are doing that, because they are members of that dorm, right? Because they're sort of, we very much at the University of Dallas, you belong to a community when you belong to a particular dorm, right? If they're doing that to sort of haze those members of that particular dorm as members of that particular dorm, that very well could be hazing. I'm not saying it as necessarily is. There would have to be a ruling about that, but it sure begins to look like it, right? Given the definitions we have given. Okay. And I'm drawing these again from case studies of other schools and things. Upper class students invite you to a party off campus, but they say that you can't come unless you drink alcohol. Is that hazing? Could be, right? If it's like an unofficial group, right, and you're not in this group unless you come and drink alcohol, right? That is, right, you're underage. They are, you know, saying that you must commit an illegal act, right? That is illegal for you to possess and consume alcohol if you are not of age, right? If they are doing that and saying, well, you can't be a part of us, you can't be a part of this party, it could be hazing, um, right? Now, I would think that anyone who invites you to a party with that as a condition is not somebody I want to hang around with anyway. Somebody puts conditions on me socializing with them. Seems like somebody I don't want to hang around with anyway. If you're an upper class student and you're the kind of person who does this, who puts conditions on people for them to socialize with you, I think you're kind of a low life. Quite honestly, I don't mince words about this stuff. I would say if you're an upper class student doing it, you better stop. And if you are an underclass student and you're underage and somebody puts this kind of condition on you, I would avoid that party at all costs. And I would avoid those people in the future at all costs because they don't want your friendship. They don't want friendship. They want acolytes, right? And they're going to use alcohol as a part of that. But I think they're treading on some very dangerous waters there. A club, let's say, has its annual spring formal party at the home of an alumnus off campus, obviously, right? They begin having a drinking game and tell new members that playing it is a part of the ritual that all new members undergo. That would definitely qualify as hazing. That would absolutely qualify as hazing, right? New members are being forced to commit an illegal act in all likelihood, right? If they're underage, right? And undergo a drinking game, which is against the code of student conduct, right? Um, Even if it happens off campus, that would definitely qualify as hazing. Okay. The seniors on a university sports team blindfold pledges, drive them out into the country, and leave them there to find their way home. Absolutely, that would qualify as hazing in the state laws in, I think, every single state. As far as I understand the laws against hazing, I don't know all the laws in every other state, but I would assume in other states that qualifies as well. But yes, that would absolutely qualify as hazing. Okay, I just want to wrap up in a way by really thinking about some of you might even reflect like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, do people really do this stuff at other universities? Well, they have in the past, and that's why there are laws against it. But like some of you be like, why would people do this? Like, where does this come from? And I think if you sort of study the psychology of this, if you think about it, right, it really comes from a kind of misguided attempt to create unity or bonding or group identity, right, by doing this sort of thing. Like we're going to somehow, punish you. We're going to somehow like put you through some terrible experience so that you will feel like you had to be tough enough to be one of us, right? And especially right if the upper members of the group went through this themselves. It's like, well, you got to go through what we went through to be one of us, right? And to be the kind of person that's one of us, right? And we want to show that you're tough enough, or that you have loyalty enough that you'd be willing to do these things, these terrible things, undergo these terrible things. That you have enough invested in us. And my sense is, if you need to haze people to create unity or bonding or group identity, you have a lousy group. or it's a group, maybe it's a group with a lousy mission or a lousy identity. And the group better fix that, right? Rather than engage in hazing. You need to fix so that you have a positive reason that you have unity in your group. You ought to have a positive reason that people want to bond with you, and you ought to have a positive group identity that people want to be a part of that identity. If you have to, resort to hazing actions to create those things, I think you probably have a lousy purpose for your group. You have a lousy identity for your group. Um, yeah, and you probably have a lousy group. I'm just gonna be honest with you, right? And until you fix that, yeah, you're gonna need something else, right? I think there's a sense of kind of tribalism that right leads to hazing. What do I mean by that? Right, a kind of creating us against them view of the world that underlies this. Right, that there's us, the members of this group, and then there's everybody else. Right, that we're the particular group, we're the elite group, we're the special people, we're the pure people, whatever you want to say, right? And everybody else out there is the them, right? And so we're gonna make people undergo this so they understand who we are, and we're the us, and everybody that hasn't gone through this kind of an experience, they're the them out there. They're the weak. They're the ones that couldn't go through this, right? And that's what justifies doing bad things to people, to make sure that they're of like the good type, the us type, right? And I think that is a kind of core understanding, a core identity, a core thing that leads to hazing, right? Now, once again, right, if that's what you need to create your group, I think you have a problem, right? Maybe you need to focus on creating a positive mission for your group, a positive purpose for your group, right? Rather than focusing on the them that you're trying to oppose. Maybe you ought to start doing a better job with the we, and making the we, right, better and positive, and a kind of group people want to belong to anyway, right? So that you're not focused on the them at all. You're focused on all the good things that we are doing, right? And I think that's the way to fix that hazing. So yeah, I do believe, right? Hazing comes from this sort of notion of like, we're going to create unity or bonding through this, horrible experience, or we've already started with an idea that there's us and there's the them out there, and we want to impose that, and make sure that this person is one of us, right? And that they're willing to undergo this stuff is the sign that they're really one of us, right? And both of those, I hope you see, right, comes from a very, very bad place. Okay. All right, that's what I have for you. I hope you now understand hazing. I hope you understand the laws about hazing, the student conduct code about hazing. I hope you understand a little bit of where hazing comes from. I sure hope you understand the consequences of hazing. But if you have any further questions, just email us at studentlife@udallas.edu, and we'll be happy to address them. Be happy to elaborate on anything in this video, and deal with any questions you may have. All right, so thank you very much. I hope I've kept this fairly short. I've kept it to under a half an hour. And I hope you've learned something, and I hope you were able to progress forward in a positive way with all the groups that you belong to. Thanks very much.